A couple of years ago, I made a video titled The Story of Satan. And for a recap as to what the video was about, it was basically, visions I had during meditations as to if there is an actual Satan and what really happened. And to summarize, basically, it was essentially an angelic soul. You would call an angelic soul. It just means a soul that resides in the eternal now and does not incarnate anywhere. It is a soul that's essentially permanently bound to the heavens. But this particular soul was incredibly fascinated with life, and he became fixated on a couple that he was observing in what you would define as prehistoric times, I guess caveman era. And he was very fixated on their relationship and their love for each other. And he was obsessed with them. Lo and behold, one thing that changed was when he was observing their life. One day, the woman of that couple got eaten by a lion. And essentially, this soul, even being in divine perfection, still has free will, like we all do, went into a sort of existential crisis where he was attempting to reverse that event, but that event is irreversible because it's in an eternal looping cycle, because everything is in an eternal looping cycle. Actually, God itself, which I'm really fascinated by how few people aren't mystified by what the actual light is. A lot of people talk about the light. They talk about how it's a demiurge and it's a soul trap, or it's just Jesus, or it's just God and he created everything. They talk about the outer layers of the eternal light. I don't really hear that many people talk about the internal structure or the mystery of existence that defines that light. Okay? I think about this every single day. I am mystified by existence, as Satan was mystified by this eternal loop that he tried to retract and make right again. And it wouldn't really matter if he did make another timeline where she wasn't eaten by the lion, because there will be another timeline after that in which she is again. So you can fix it as many times as you want, but every variation of said event will continue forever. So this is where the misconception is that this is a pure evil, dark being, just wanting to be malevolent for the sake of being malevolent or to snatch souls. To him, to this being, what he's doing is he's actually attempting to extinguish this eternal light. And I think of this light as a toroid. I think of God and creation as a toroid. So the outer layers, that the energy that this toroid projects outwards is dependent upon the energy that's going inwards and vice versa. So it's looping in on itself. One cannot function without the other. This is like a seesaw that are codependent. Creation and eternity are codependent and cannot exist apart from each other. So what this being, Satan, whatever you want to call him, what he's trying to do is split the two. And by splitting it and splitting it and splitting it, he's attempting, in a vain attempt, to extinguish the permanence of this light, so that all of existence, period, would cease to exist. That is the ultimate goal. And it's an absolutely absurd goal because it's impossible. But you see, the point I'm trying to make is that to him, the means justifies the ends. So in actuality, he wants to end the suffering. After being traumatized from the lion, he was not happy with this creation, and he was observing souls, myriads and myriads of souls incarnating into these realities within this light, because there's nothing else that exists. And he would project his own and minimize his own consciousness and observe different realities, and he would observe the chaos that would ensue as a result of the soul willing to forget what it is. You see, this toroidal light, like, okay, Bashar, this is where I have a little disagreement with him. He says that God is all that is. Everything in existence is God. That's true. I agree with Bashar. Okay, I'm talking about the channel Deralanka. But in actuality, all that is does have its own unique persona. So us collectively in the forever, that eternal light still has its own personality. It's still a being of some kind. And that being is, we're little representations of that being's character, minute representations of it and all the facets of it. So to him, the means justify the ends. So in actuality, he wants to end all suffering and end everything, period. Now, this is complex, and it is complex. Life is so mysterious. It's so profound. I don't think enough people appreciate this. I know everyone has existential questions, even the quote-unquote normies, and the normies are just people who haven't realized their true nature yet. You see, probably the primary reason why this forgetfulness takes place in incarnation has to do with some kind of eternal loneliness. Because I've always wondered, why leave perfection? Bashar, speaking of Bashar again, he says that we leave perfection and forget who we are because we want to recreate who we think of ourselves as again, recreate our definition of our personal existence. I understand that from one perspective as being an adventurous thing to do, but here's the problem, is that it also implies that in the eternal perfection, that there is some kind of incompleteness or lack, which is strange to me because in my near-death experience, I felt no such thing whatsoever. When I went into that eternal light, I became the purest, most elevated, most perfected, free, liberated version of myself that you could possibly imagine. And in that state, it's hard for me to think why there really even is a need to go incarnate to quote unquote recreate your identity. I get it. There's probably nothing else to do. And this is perhaps why Satan and characters like that are in the position that they are. There's people that are, or souls that may, or aspects of God, let's call them aspects of God, that are not necessarily admirers of this eternal toroidal loop. All the possibilities are there. Every single type of character that you could possibly imagine, every type of personality, is there. And why would that not include that personality that's trying to destroy itself? And it's destroying itself because it's creating endless polarities of itself. The light is creating endless polarities of itself, mirrors of itself, opposites. It's a fascinating and terrifying thing. My point of this video is that just because God does in fact exist, that doesn't answer all our questions. It only leads to infinitely more questions.